All right, we have a little activity, case study kind of thing to help you understand how to link your goals to interventions and then incorporate evaluations. So as you can see, I moved my office to outside because I can't believe it's November and I'm sitting outside with no coat recording a video lecture. It's way too nice. So, all right. So I'm going to show you on the next slide. You have a client who has prioritized their problem as anxiety. And so you worked to set up 2 goals with a couple different interventions under each goal. So your first goal is they're going to set aside more time for homework. Apparently this client has, he's anxious about schoolwork. So you identified that on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, they're going to work on their homework from 2 to 3. And then after working on homework, do something you really enjoy for 30 minutes. So those are those things. The second goal was attending some work in school events. So intervention 1 is attending the Halloween party at school for at least 1 hour. And intervention 2, join your coworkers on their weekly night out after work on Wednesdays. So in this scenario, you've worked with your client now for a while, and you are ready to evaluate if these goals were effective. So the video is going to pause and pull up a question on the next slide, and you will need to answer. You'll have to answer in the comment or the answer section 4 different evaluation questions you might ask. So thinking back to the slide or the video lecture earlier, going through all those different questions you could ask about interventions. That'll kind of give you some direction, but also think like, what questions would you ask this client to know if they accomplish their objectives, goals, and are targeting their anxiety. So come up with 4, preferably 2 for each goal, but however you want to do it. So here are some examples of questions that you could ask to evaluate if this was an effective goal, objectives of interventions. So did your homework and relaxation schedule work well? That's up to the client to say yes or no. How much more accomplished did you feel about homework this week? So I would throw in a scaling question with that. Did you meet anyone new at the party? So you could ask if they successfully went. Were you able to engage in conversations with your coworkers? So those are some of those questions. I would guess maybe you could phrase it in the way if it's follow-up questions. So this is going to give you some of that subjective client feedback on there. So it's not necessarily using a survey or rating anxiety and depression levels. You are just asking them questions to elicit feedback to get their perception on how effective this goal and interventions were for them. All right, so we're going to practice again. So now I took out the interventions because I want to have you practice thinking about interventions as well. So the prioritized problem is anxiety. And still anxiety. So the goal number 1 is you want them to increase their friendship circle as well as increasing self-care. So the next slide is going to ask you to identify 2 interventions. So make sure they're specific and measurable and achievable and realistic and time-oriented. So come up with 2 different interventions that you could include for these goals. Now, obviously yours aren't going to match mine exactly, but the ones that I came up with were number 1 was for goal 1, increase their friendship circle. So they're going to make 2 new friends by the end of the month, and join 1 club at school by the end of the month. So in the attempt to meet more people, this is what they were going to do. And goal 2, increase your self-care. Make a schedule to budget time by the end of the week. Cook 1 meal a day. So you can see the measurability in that. So now this is where it's going to get a little bit wonky. So you have 2 options. The next question is going to ask you to identify evaluation questions that you might have around your goals and interventions. So you can either answer the evaluation questions you would ask for the interventions that you created, and I'll be able to see because I'll have all your answers if they match up well. And then, or you could just opt to what are evaluation questions you might ask about my interventions, whatever makes more sense to you. So on the next slide, you'll be asked to identify 4 different evaluation questions that you might ask. So evaluation questions, did you find any clubs that interest you? So it's kind of, again, that subjective checking in to see if they were able to find one. Have you made progress expanding your friendship opportunities? Can we look at your schedule? How did it work to follow through? Did you cook meals this week? So, I mean, they don't have to be anything earth-shattering. It could just literally be like, did you do this? Eventually, you're going to want to start going back to the prioritized problem of anxiety and kind of see if that actually is helping. So these evaluation questions are talking more specifically about the interventions and goals. But I would always suggest, like, if you're targeting anxiety, when you first start working with the client, to get a baseline of what their anxiety is. So you could do what's called a GAD-7. It's a generalized anxiety disorder, 7 questions. It's a very, very, very common therapeutic tool. Doctors' offices even use it for a non-social work setting. So getting a baseline number of what their anxiety was at the beginning of treatment, and then implementing that in every 2 weeks or so, whatever it feels appropriate for treatment. Because then after you've evaluated and figured out if they were able to do these goals and interventions, then you could link back and see, hey, are your anxiety scores going down? Or maybe they're going up because they're feeling really anxious about doing these things. But that's going to give you another measurement up there. So hopefully that kind of helps make sense, kind of the progression of, you have these goals, you make these interventions, you circle back around, asking questions if they're effective, if they even did it. And then with the end goal of finally circling back to the prioritized problem and measuring to see if that has improved at all.